On the most recent Forbidden and Limited list, Konami unbanned 3 old school cards, Yatagarasu, Change of Heart, and Time Seal, and I think that all 3 of these cards are fine to come back in the game. We'll probably talk about tomorrow which one I think is the most likely to see competitive play, but overall I think that all 3 of these cards are good choices. But I am a bit worried that Konami will take the wrong lesson from unbanning these cards, and I wanted to talk about that in today's video. So let's take a look at some data here. So when Konami posted about the October ban list on Twitter a few formats ago, that post got 600 retweets and 1,300 likes. When we look at the February ban list, which was the one after that, we see similar numbers here. So these seem to be the average numbers that Konami is getting on ban list announcements, at least over the past couple of formats. But let's take a look at the most recent ban list announcement, and you might notice that the numbers have gone up just a little bit. So on the May ban list announcement, we have 3,600 retweets and 6,000 or almost 6,000 likes. This is incredibly crazy to see. I mean, it really goes to show that if you unban a couple old school cards, people will talk about them. Now it's kind of interesting here because I feel like Yatagarasu has been largely overshadowed by the discussion around Change of Heart. Change of Heart and Yatagarasu are 2 very iconic cards, but perhaps Change of Heart is a card that is more well known to the average fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! That didn't really play the game competitively. Yatagarasu is obviously one of the most iconic banned cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, but to someone that's only seen the TV show, maybe Change of Heart is a little bit more iconic. And I think that Konami might take the wrong lesson from this and maybe start unbanning other cards that players know and love. And that's where we get to the point that I'm a little bit worried that Konami is now going to unban Pot of Greed in the future, specifically because they kind of went a little bit viral by unbanning Change of Heart. Now, viral might not be the right word, but Yu-Gi-Oh was trending on Twitter for quite a while after that ban list was announced, and we see a lot of articles talking about Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Here's one from CBR, here's one from The Gamer, we even have one from IGN, which is really funny because there's a ton of problems in this article, but yeah, people are talking about Change of Heart being unbanned. It's a big old school card that people remember, and Konami unbanned it, so now a lot of people are talking about Yu-Gi-Oh that otherwise might have not been talking about the current format. And I think that is pretty interesting, but like I said, what if Konami sees this as an opportunity to unban other old school cards just for the sake of going semi-viral when they do it? And I really think that Pot of Greed would be the go-to card to put to 1 copy per deck if Konami really wants people talking about Yu-Gi-Oh when a new ban list goes live. Now, should Pot of Greed be at 1 copy per deck? Absolutely not. I mean, that card is way too good to come back, but if we're thinking about it from a marketing standpoint instead of a balance standpoint, I think that Pot of Greed would be a pretty good choice if Konami wants to go semi-viral again with the next ban list. In today's video, I wanted to go over 5 cards that are currently banned that I feel like Konami might consider limiting in a future ban list update just to kind of go semi-viral once again. First off, as I've kind of already talked about a little bit here, I think Konami might consider unbanning Pot of Greed in terms of the single most impactful card from a marketing standpoint that they could unban. Pot of Greed has to be the most iconic one on the ban list. Everyone knows about Pot of Greed, even non-Yu-Gi-Oh players kind of know about Pot of Greed. It is that iconic, and I think that if Konami really wanted to get people talking about a ban list, putting Pot of Greed to 1 copy per deck, even only for just 1 format, would probably get a lot of people talking about Yu-Gi-Oh. Now, should Pot of Greed be limited from a balance standpoint? Absolutely not. I know people think that just because Ash Blossom exists that Pot of Greed is now fair. That's not really how things work. Every Yu-Gi-Oh card has a counter, but just because Ash Blossom is in the game doesn't mean Pot of Greed is suddenly fair. Next up, I think that Snatch Steal could go back to 1 copy per deck if Konami wants to unban older cards. You know, if Change of Heart doesn't make a big impact on the metagame, Snatch Steal would be the next card to unban because it's very similar, but in a lot of ways it is better. By being an equip spell, you can search it with cards like Hidden Armory. You can also play it in decks like any warrior decks that play Isolde. But don't forget, with Snatch Steal, you are keeping the card permanently as long as you have the Snatch Steal on your board, unlike Change of Heart, which is a 1-turn only thing. So I think that Snatch Steal is probably better than Change of Heart, but if Change of Heart ends up being too weak in the current format, maybe Konami will unban Snatch Steal to try to encourage players to steal their opponent's monsters when going second. Next up, I'll mention Fight Fiber Jar. I see a lot of comments about this card on different videos on my channel talking about banned cards. Personally, I think that Fiber Jar could go to 3 copies per deck and it would not make a difference, but it's a card that a lot of old school players remember, and even if it's not that good, that's not really what this would be about, right? It's more about getting people to talk about the ban list by unbanning an old school favorite. Cyber Jar is probably a bit too risky to bring back. I'm sure it wouldn't make a big difference, but I think that Fiber Jar coming back to 1 copy per deck or even 3 copies per deck would get people talking without completely breaking the format. One card that might be a bit scary to bring back, but I feel like it wouldn't actually matter, would be Butterfly Dagger Elma. This card was obviously only used in an FTK, so probably it's not going to come back, but realistically I think it could go to 1 copy per deck or even 3 copies per deck, and I don't think it would actually be played in 2022. This card coming back could get people talking about how it was used for an FTK back in the day, and then people could talk about whether or not the FTK was good in the current format. Would Elma make a difference on the metagame? Probably not, but it's a card that could come back in my opinion, and I think it's a fun old school card where people would definitely talk about it, but it wouldn't ruin the entire format. Finally, I'll mention Ultimate Offering. I've been talking about this card for years now. I really think it could go to 1 copy per deck and make no impact on the metagame, but it is a very old card that looks kind of scary on paper, so I think it would probably get people talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. You know, this is a card that was released in an old starter deck among other places, but it's a card that a lot of people are afraid of, and I think for that reason it would be an interesting card to bring back to 1 copy per deck. I know Ultimate Offering can seem pretty crazy on paper, but in reality it is a card that would only want to be played in combo decks, but it's a card you wouldn't be able to use on turn 1 outside of like a crazy combo with Temple of the Kings, which already isn't that good. So a combo deck doesn't want to like waste their turn 1 trying to set up Ultimate Offering and then wait for turn 3 to fully combo. They want to just combo on turn 1, which is why Offering probably wouldn't see play. But it's a card that people do have interest in, it's a card people are willing to talk about, and for that reason it could theoretically come back to 1 copy per deck if Konami wants to use Banlist to promote Yu-Gi-Oh! As a brand. I don't know, maybe people won't agree with me at all on this, maybe Konami won't do this ever, but to me at least it seems like Change of Heart really got people talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! So if I was Konami, I might consider unbanning some other cards just to get people hyped about the next ban list. Pot of Greed is not my choice for what I would bring back because I definitely do not want that card in the format, but from a marketing standpoint, I mean, it would go over pretty well with a lot of old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans, so that might be a thing to consider here, even if it's not like the best for Yu-Gi-Oh's overall balance. Anyway, let me know what you think about these ban list points that I made in today's video. I know to some people they only think the ban list is for profits, but balancing definitely does play a factor. If the format is really bad, people will go to less tournaments, they'll buy less cards. So I think Konami isn't only thinking of profits on ban lists, they're also considering balancing cards, of course, but you know, unbanning a crazy old school card like Change of Heart might have shown them that if you do that, people will start talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Even if they haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh! In quite a while. Let me know though in the comment section below what you think. I'll see you later. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.